This from PJ to start the show. PJ writes, Kevin, I'm an old radio guy. Play the hits, dude. Don't let guys like KP move you off your mark. The name is the game, and anybody with a brain knows it. I'm not really into you or any of your guests telling me how good Josh Connerly looks in shorts. I'll make up my own mind when he goes up against Dexter Lawrence and Abdul Carter in the season opener. Thank you, PJ. Appreciate it. Good morning, everybody. The mayor was on with the Junkies this morning. If you missed it, we will play some of the highlights of the conversation they had, I think, in studio, right, Chris? She was in studio
She was
for
in
this?
studio this morning, yeah.
Yeah, so we will play some of the highlights of that conversation at around 11 a.m. Ben's going to join us from training camp at 12. The team is on the field as we speak. Dan Quinn met with the media before practice began. No Terry McLaurin. His holdout now reaches day 3. So lots to get to. But real quickly on PJ's email, I actually think we have moved past the name being, the play the hits. Play the hits is a radio term that every program director that I've ever worked for and anybody else has ever worked for, it's about playing the hits, meaning you want the A topic, whatever it is, played over and over and over again because it appeals to the most people. And yes, the name without question appeals to a mass majority of people, but there has to be something that drives it. We had it on Sunday with the Trump Truth Social tweets. We're now Thursday in week 1 of training camp, and it's not what I would call an obvious A topic today. But thanks for the advice, PJ. By the way, I don't think that Josh Connerly would be matched up against Dexter Lawrence. Dexter Lawrence, who is clearly one of the best D linemen in the league, is really more of an inside nose tackle, D tackle. So he's going to be matched up, against Abdul Carter, against Brian Burns. The Giants have a lot of defensive talent. When you look at their depth chart and you look at what they have on defense, there's no reason why they shouldn't be a really good defensive team. Their issue in recent years when they've had talent defensively is they've just been on the field too much because offensively they've been so poor. So the Giants, went out and, they drafted Jackson Dart. They signed Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston, by the way. And they're hoping that they can be better offensively. I thought Tyrone Tracy as a rookie last year was a bit underrated among the young backs. Remember, they drafted the Arizona State kid, Cam Skattebo. Devin Singletary still on that team. And they have an absolute star wide receiver in Malik Neighbors. This is a guy that caught well over 100 balls as a rookie with terrible quarterback play. So if they improve their quarterback play, I don't think they're going to be an easy out. I don't. I think their offensive line is solid. It's all about quarterback with the Giants. And we know the NFL, year to year, month to month, week to week league. Nobody had Washington last year winning 12 games, and nobody this year has the New York Giants winning more than 6 games. So I think their over-under number is 5.5. It might be 6.5. But they have talent. They actually have talent. They've had talent for a while on the defensive side of the ball. But anyway, PJ, that's not going to be the Dexter Lawrence shouldn't be the guy lining up opposite Josh Connerly. Abdul Carter, yes. Brian Burns, yes. Some of their outside. Thibodeau, yes. Thibodeau is probably in his final year in New York, right? I'm guessing. I would think, is Kayvon Thibodeau in the last year of his rookie deal and they didn't pick up the 5th-year option? I forget. I'll have to look at that. The division's going to be fascinating this year because it's, for the first time, we're actually, It's Philly and Washington. When
he
have
signed
we
an
heard that?
extension last year.
He signed the extension last year,
Says
Thibodeau?
it was signed last year for 3 years. It was set to begin in 25, 26.
Okay. My fault. For whatever reason, I thought that we were in a make or break season for Kayvon Thibodeau. He's talented, but there seems to be a bit of an issue there at times. The division's going to be great, though. Washington, Philadelphia, obviously the clear-cut favorites. Philly, the clear-cut favorite. Washington, the clear-cut pick to finish second and be a playoff team. And then Dallas is a bit of a wild card. Like, they've got to be healthy at quarterback all year long, and we don't know what the new coach, Brian Schottenheimer, will bring. They have talent, and so do the Giants. It'll come down to whether or not, Jameis Winston, Russell Wilson, Jackson Dart can play quarterback. Because if they get any sort of upgrade, significant upgrade at QB, they could be a tough out. We'll see him in the opener. By the way, that line's down to 6.5. Opened at 7.5. We're now a 6.5 point favorite. Week 1 against the New York Football Giants. I wanted there's one other email that I wanted to read, and I'm looking for it real quickly. Yeah, it was a very interesting and I thought thoughtful email about the name in particular, and it comes from Martin. I did have it in front of me just a few minutes ago, and now I don't. Here it is. Martin. Kevin, I'm like you. I grew up a huge Redskins fan, went to games with my dad and brothers at RFK, lifelong diehard. I have to admit, I'm now name agnostic. I'm the only one in my family and among my friends that feels this way, but the game changer for me was Jaden Daniels. The winning season was great, but Jaden Daniels has made me lukewarm now about the name. Until last year, I never thought I would feel the same way about this team unless it went back to Redskins. I was wrong. But don't get me wrong. I want the old name back, and I hate Commanders, but watching our city's team repped by the greatest rookie quarterback of all time pulled me back in. Martin, I mean, that's awesome. I'm glad you feel that way. And totally respect the way you feel. I feel differently. But there's no doubt that last season, and I talked about this, the day after the Detroit win in particular, that it just felt so good. That win in Detroit in the divisional round of the NFL playoffs, 45-31 over the 1 seed and a heavy favorite in the game. To go on the road, there's something so thrilling about going on the road in the postseason and winning. Something Joe Gibbs did all the time. Gibbs was such a great big game coach. His playoff record says that. But so many of those wins came on the road. His first playoff game in version 2.0, 2005, playoff win in Tampa. I mean, right, first playoff game coming back, year 2, they go on the road and they get a playoff win in Tampa, and they almost got one in Seattle the following week. There is definitely something thrilling about that. And I remember coming in here the day after or the Monday after the Saturday night game against Detroit in January saying, this is as close to feeling like I used to feel. There was something about DC and our football franchise being repped, as Martin, you described. And I think it's interesting that what really brought you in was the quarterback as much as anything else. And by the way, that makes sense to me. I think the passion, the increased passion from those that had lost it last year, if you were like Martin, it probably had as much to do with the excitement around a superstar quarterback and the understanding that it's just the beginning with Jaden Daniels, that there is more to come and maybe a decade plus of this to come. But there was the win over Detroit last year for me was the number one memorable moment of the season. And there were so many to choose from. So many to choose from. But going on the road in that high profile of a game. The Saturday night national televised game. Brady's on the call for Fox. It's the lead team. It's, the Lions and the excitement and that stadium being as ginned up as it was, and to take it to them the way we took it to them. And I say we. It felt more like we that night than it had in 10 years. In 10 years. And your description of Jaden being a part of it, think about the Mark Brunell playoff team. Think about the Kirk Cousins playoff team. Much different in terms of the excitement around it than it was for the RG3 2012 season or the Jaden Daniels 2024 season. The Detroit game for me is number one last year. That was my favorite moment of the season by far. But Martin, your family, dude, you have lived it, you have felt it, and if you've come around and you are now lukewarm on the name and you are bought in, more power to you. It's happened to a lot of people, and it hasn't happened to a lot of people. It's the lecturing from people who have never felt it like you have, Martin, that is the most, painful to listen to. Not painful, but just it irks, I think, a lot of us. But good for you. And I think there are plenty of stories like Martin. I still think the mass majority feel the way you could sense they felt, on Sunday and Monday. But who knows? I mean, winning big with a superstar at quarterback is the best scenario. And I've said this many times about the loss of the name back in 2020. It was actually the best time. If the name was ever going to go away, the fan population of this team was at its lowest in 2020. I mean, you were going to piss off the fewest number of people in 2020 because so many people had exited already because of the losing and the embarrassment and the owner and the whole thing. So the Detroit game for me last year was number one in terms of the best memories of the season. I really did feel that night as close to the way I used to feel as any game. I'm not back to where I was. I'll probably be super pumped next year when they look like our team. I'm talking about 2026 for 17 weeks out of the season. I think that's going to help, no doubt. I think the organization made the right decision. They should bring the logo back as well. But in looking at all of the games last year, Cincinnati, Monday night, that was the first big moment. That was the first memorable moment of the season. 3rd and 7, the bomb to Terry for the touchdown to give him a 38-26 lead and essentially ice a game on Monday Night Football coming out party for Jaden Daniels. The Hail Mary moment against Chicago on October 27th, late afternoon kick. You got the sun starting to set, and here's Jaden running around buying 8, 9, 10 seconds and then letting it fly. The deflection, the DB who was over, mocking the fans, getting into the play late, Noah Brown catching it. That was an incredible moment. The Dallas loss in late November when Jaden hit Terry with 14 seconds to go on an 86-yard touchdown pass. I mean, it was actually more improbable than the Hail Mary. The fact that Terry took a pass and went 86 yards to make it 27-26 with 14 seconds to go in the game. That was a moment. It was a loss, so it's not really at the top of my most memorable games of last year, but what a moment that was. And then we get into December, and clearly the Philadelphia game at home. Down by multiple scores, entering the fourth quarter, turning the ball over 5 times, Jaden willing them to a 36-33 win. The Atlanta game the following week, coming from 17-7 down at halftime, the drive in overtime with Jaden strapping the entire team to his back to win that game. How about the season finale, which was a game that was significant for seeding, but Mariota's in the game. They decided that was probably the worst half of football that he played all season long. Dallas really bothered him in both games. And Mariota comes in, and on the final drive of the game, they go 11 plays, 91 yards, and you got him on a read option, 4th and 1, taking it 30-some yards, and then throwing the touchdown pass to Terry with like 3 seconds to go in the game. I know that was not a significant game. We were already locked in playoff-wise. Seeding was still in play as Chicago and Green Bay were playing at the same time. And then we get to the playoff games. The Tampa game, certainly on the short list of the most memorable games of the year. What a football game that was. And to drive it, 10 plays, 50-some-odd yards, burning the entire final 4.5 minutes, and having our guy, Zane Gonzalez, doink one in from 37 yards out at the gun to win it 23-20. What a football game that was. How good was Jaden in that game? But for me, the number one memorable game of 2024 was the game against the Lions. That was a moment which was unexpected. Washington was a 9-point underdog going into that game. Detroit had the bye week. They were rested. They were a 15-2 football team heading into it. Yeah, they were banged up on defense. We knew that heading into the game. But the back and forth nature of that game with the scoring, 31-21 at halftime. Martin's interception, Sandra-Still's interception at the end of the first half, Detroit's turnovers killing them. They went away from Jahmyr Gibbs, which was insanity. And Washington basically just scored almost every single time they had the football. Jaden threw for 300. He ran for 50-something. Brian Robinson Jr. had the best game he had in weeks. And Washington rolled up 45 points on the road in the playoffs to completely quiet the crowd. By the way, if you've not watched Quarterback yet, the Jared Goff, portion of Quarterback, it's Burrow, Goff, and Cousins on Netflix. But that playoff game, and Jared Goff's wife, who is a 12 on a scale of 1 to 10, and she's in their suite with other wives of the players, and the devastation and the finality of it all, as John Madden used to say, in playoff games, just feeling the finality of if you don't get it done, it's over. And this wild ride, this exciting 18-week ride, 19, 20 weeks in the case of these teams, is over. And you could see the pain that Washington had inflicted on that fan base, on those players. It was glorious to watch. Detroit, playoffs, divisional round. For me, the number one memorable moment of 2024. Obviously, that was played in 2025, January of 2025. I understand that. What was number one on your list last year? The number one memorable moment or game from the 2024 season? 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. Great news on the stadium that broke yesterday towards the end of the show. Mendelson's worked out, a tweak deal with the team. A vote is more likely than not, going to happen late next week. It'll pass easily. I've been told multiple times, at least 10 votes. They only need 7. And the RFK plan will be off and running as long as the president doesn't get in the middle of it. And 2030 is the date. And there will be a Super Bowl within 10 years. Final Fours down the road. World Cup games down the road. Maybe a college football title game down the road. Who knows? Plenty of great concerts. They're not going to fear coming to D.C. anymore. They'll have a facility. We are still 5 years away from that being a reality, but it'll be fun to watch the project grow. And it looks like it will be finalized by the city council late next week. That is great news. But 301 230 0980, 301 230 0980. What's your number one moment from 2024? For me, it's the win in Detroit. And there are, close moments that were considered, but to me, that was the moment that was the most exhilarating. And to be on that stage for the first time in a long, long time. They had not been in the divisional round since 2005. To be in that final 8 weekend, to be in that highlighted Saturday night primetime spot, and to be on the road and to go in and do what they did offensively in particular with a rookie quarterback, that was the moment of the season for me. What was yours? 301 230 0980. You're listening to the Kevin Sheehan Show on the Team 980. You can also listen to us on the team980.com. And we are viewable every day on the Team 980 YouTube page. When you get there, subscribe to us and hit the like button. answer after they had fallen behind early in the second quarter, 14-10. The bubble screen to Terry. He took it 58 yards. They took the lead 17-14, and they never gave up the lead. 31 points in the first half on the road in a divisional playoff game in the most hostile of environments. That game, that night in Detroit, that to me was the number one most memorable moment for me of the 2024 season. What was yours? 301-230-0980. I take notes for these games, and then I use those notes to do the show after the games, the Monday show after a Sunday game. This was a Saturday night game, and I'm just looking through my notes right now after the game, and I just wrote down, emotionally, a place I haven't been in 33 years. And that was how I felt in that moment. Like that was the closest to feeling like I had years before, to be on that stage and to see that team, our team, no matter how different it looks and the name, et cetera, that's still bothersome. I'm not, I'll never get off that. But to see it, our football franchise repped in that particular situation, it was what Gibbs's teams used to do. They used to go on the road and wreck Chicago, at Soldier Field, back-to-back years, in 86 and 87. Winning road playoff games in Philadelphia, Minnesota, that Joe did. The near playoff wins a couple of times in San Francisco, including Joe Gibbs's final game in January of 93 as the defending champions. That playoff game at Candlestick, it actually, believe it or not, was on TV recently. It was on the NFL Network, I think. And that year was, I think it was a Steve Young thing. And Steve Young had a great year that year. And remember, they lost to the Cowboys the following week. That was the first Super Bowl for Jimmy. They went on, 2 weeks later to crush Buffalo in the Super Bowl in Pasadena. But yeah, that Detroit game, I here it is. I said, I can't get over how good Jaden Daniels is and how unbelievably how good he was in the biggest game of his rookie season. Just on the road, I wrote, he dominated, threw for 242 yards in the first half on the way to 31, 28 in the second quarter. The team had 271 yards of offense in the first half. They didn't punt. And the only time they got stopped, remember, was early in the game when they took the ball out of his hands and gave it to Marcus Mariota on a 4th and short. Remember that disaster? Wow, was he good in that game. 22 of 31 for 299, not exactly 300. His QBR was 91.8. Unstoppable. They rushed for 182 yards in that game. Brian Robinson Jr. had by far and away the best game he had had in weeks. Remember, they weren't getting anything from running backs down the stretch. And he went for 77 yards on 15 carries, 5.1 yards per carry. The most in terms of average yards per carry since he had broken out, early in the game against the Titans when they blew out the Titans in early December. The win over Detroit, 45-31, to advance to the NFC Championship game was my number one moment of 2024. What was yours? Chris, did you have one? Chris is in
I do.
for Max.
I do have one, actually. I think, to me, the moment that was actually the most exciting was when they beat Philly. The Philly win was really exciting for me. I was at one of the bars we were doing the game shows from with Linnell and Denton, and that place was full of Philly fans. It was just Eagles screaming everywhere the whole time. And when they came back, and in that fourth quarter, just watching all their jaws drop, that was phenomenal. That was just awesome to see that.
Yeah. That was so incredible. And by the way, it seemed improbable for a lot of it. And a lot of things had to go their way. We know a lot of things went their way all year long. The ball bounced in their direction all season long. Devontae Smith dropping the 3rd and 5 from Pickett was the play of the game because the game is over if he catches that. It's right in his hands. He's wide open. New Orleans had a 2-point conversion attempt that was catchable. We know the moments during the course of the year. And, by the way, that's not something that regresses to any sort of mean, you mathematicians out there, okay? That's not what happens in standalone events, in independent events. So it, of course, could happen again. And one of the reasons it could happen again is they've got a quarterback that makes it happen all the time. Patrick Mahomes' magic hasn't regressed to the mean at any point. Here were a couple of other quick notes that, I wrote down. Every week, I say, is it too early to call him elite? Is it too early to say that he's one of the top 5 QBs in the game? Is it too early to put him in the Mahomes, Jackson, Allen, Burrow class? Is it too early to say he just had the greatest rookie season in NFL history? Well, that was sewn up at that point. And then to talk about 2 road playoff wins. All right. He became just the 4th rookie quarterback in NFL history to win multiple playoff games, but only the 2nd to win 2 road playoff games. And then he became the 6th rookie quarterback to make it to a championship game, but the only quarterback out of the 6 to be the primary reason that they made it to the championship game. Remember Flacco, Sanchez, Purdy, Sean King, and Roethlisberger were the other 5 as rookies that made it to their conference championship games, but they had done it on the strength of defensive football primarily, or running game, not relying on the quarterback. Flacco, when he did it, that wasn't his Super Bowl run. His rookie year, he was fine. Sanchez really relied on defense. Purdy really relied on running game and defense. Roethlisberger, Sean King's Tampa team, all about running game with work done and defense. But no one had done it the way he did it. I mean, they climbed aboard number 5, and he took them to the NFC Championship game. It was the moment for me. What about you? 301-230-0980. What was your number 1 most memorable moment, most memorable game of 2024? Let's start with Eric in Norfolk. Eric, go ahead. Eric, you there? Gotcha.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
I got you now, Eric. Yep.
All right. Yeah. So for me, it was the Bears game. Not to mention the arrogance of the corner that kind of sealed their fate. There was a lot of arrogance from Bears fans going into the game. There was a lot of like Caleb versus Jaden, number 1 versus number 2 overall kind of debates. And I was watching that game at a bar with the Bears fan, and I pretty much erupted out of my seat like it was an ejector seat, and the entire place was going nuts. But, Kevin, I wanted to also touch on one thing that you were mentioning earlier about some of the losses and, the passion and everything. And that was one of the things that I felt last year. The wins were fantastic, that game in particular that I mentioned, but the way that I felt after some of those losses last year, that loss to Dallas, the loss to Pittsburgh, I remember those games really sticking with me back when my passion was at its highest. And that came back last year.
Look, there's no doubt that the most memorable play of the season was the Hail Mary, but that game was not their best. It was an odd game. They had, remember to Hail Mary to get to an 18-15 final. They had 12 points. They had not scored a touchdown. They moved the football in that game. I remember that. I don't remember the Chicago fans' arrogance. I will say that. I do know this about that game for Chicago. That ruined their season. Because weren't they, and I'm looking
they went downhill after that.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. Didn't they have a winning record going into the game? Yeah, they were 4-2 and had won 3 straight games, including a game in London where they had smacked Jacksonville. Now, the wins were against the Rams. Okay, that's a good one. But the Rams were hurting early in the season. Carolina and Jacksonville. Yes, that ruined their season. They went from After that loss, that was the first of 10 straight losses for them. A lot of the losses were close, like the Washington game was. Thanks, Eric. Really appreciate
Absolutely,
it. Let's go to Lap. Lap, your number one most memorable moment of the 2024 season was what? Lap? Let's go to Jalen. Come on, Lap. Jalen, go ahead. Number one moment for you in 2024 was what?
Good morning, Kevin. The number one moment for me is definitely the Detroit game. And I was able to attend this game in person. It's the very first playoff game that I've ever experienced. And as a young fan, lifelong fan, diehard fan, I had dreamt of always being able to not only go to a playoff game, but to see, our team win. And as you mentioned, the hostile environment, playing the number one seed on the road, and the stakes that were there. And I remember, going into halftime and seeing that 10-point lead, but I was confident at that point. I knew that we had a grasp on that game because of how well Jaden and the offense was playing. And I remember the end of the game and just looking at the scoreboard and just saying, wow, we are actually one game away from the Super Bowl. It was the greatest feeling I had ever had as a young fan. Now, mind you, being born in 97, this is like the greatest season I've ever seen, period. And just that feeling, like I had never imagined having that moment, right then and there. And it was just a surreal feeling. And yeah, man, it's definitely something that I feel like we're going to experience a lot more of, especially due to the quarterback that we have. So thank you for taking my call, Kevin.
Yeah, sure.
Hail to the Burgundy and Gold.
Jalen, I'm looking through my notes and I wrote down, for young people, this will be, along with last week, meaning the win over Tampa, these will be indelible memories. You'll be twice the age you are now. You're born in 97, you're 28. You'll be 55, 56 years old, and you will never forget the win in Tampa and the win in Detroit. The win in Detroit in particular, because it was unexpected. Massive underdog, 9-point underdog, Detroit's offense. We knew going into that game. I mean, I remember sitting here all week saying, of course we can win this game. Detroit's banged up defensively. But the issue was, were we going to be able to stop the run? Were we going to keep them from scoring 40? And we kept them to 31. And I still think, in sort of the conversation of everything kind of broke right for Washington last year. Now, they made it break right, primarily because of the quarterback. But how Detroit took the ball out of Jahmyr Gibbs' hands at any point in that game is still stunning to me. 14 carries for 105 yards. He was every time he got the ball, they were gashing Washington defensively. And David Montgomery being healthy and back for the first time in several weeks was a huge blessing for our team, because Detroit felt compelled to put him back in there because he was a guy that is a really good back and a veteran back. No, they should have never stopped handing the ball off to 26. They would have never turned the ball over 5 times had they just handed the ball to Gibbs instead of 14 times, 28 times for 250 yards, because there was no stopping him that night. Remember, in the first half, he averaged 10 yards per carry. Montgomery coming back was a huge part of that game because Dan Campbell and Ben Johnson felt like we got to play him. He's been a guy, and now he's healthy, and it's the playoffs. We got to play him. No, their best player, you could have argued last year, was Jahmyr Gibbs, and he only got 14 carries in the game. He had another 6 catches for 70 yards in the game. Let's go to, but Jalen, back to, you're never going to forget that. Being at the game will make it even more. But every young fan will remember exactly where they were when they watched the doink kick in Tampa to win a playoff game. First time that they had won a playoff game in 19 years. and the Detroit game in particular. Reggie in D.C., number one moment, memorable moment of 2024 for you was what?
For me, Kevin, it was the first of all, I love the show. It was Cincinnati because you're in this. We didn't score a touchdown the week before against the Giants. We went on 7 field goals. So of course you look at the Monday night countdown and all that. It's not a person in America that gave us a chance. So 0-2, high flying Bengals offense. First Monday night. Of course, what are we going to do in prime time? We always, and then it wasn't like it was still questions about Jaden because you kind of knew he was the guy, but you're going against an elite quarterback. You're going against a former Heisman Trophy winner. And so now this is like the showcase, and you and I as fans know every time we get into these, prime time spots, we lay an egg. Man, when that game was going, and we were literally, Kevin, going back and forth. And then that pass to Terry, that was it for me. Because I don't think I've ever seen a throw. I probably got to go to really think about it. But the degree of difficulty, it wasn't like, it was wide open. Terry had 3 or 4 steps and it was, he dropped it in. The degree of difficulty on that throw, the guts to call it on, I think it was 3rd and 7, the guts to call it, to me, that was when I realized, oh, okay, we could really do something with this guy, especially again, you're hearing Troy Aikman hyping him up, but that to me was the game, and that play was like, okay, this is different. So again, thanks for the show. Thanks for letting me chime in.
Yeah. Reggie, how about the 4th down play when he threw to Ertz when they went for it? Remember, that was the first game in which they went for multiple 4th downs.
Yeah.
And they could have kicked the field goal. They could have kicked the field goal to extend the lead to what would have been, it was 31-26-8. And they went for it, and he made that throw to Ertz. And then, the 3rd and 7 against zero coverage blitz, all-out blitz, ball's out of his hand. Not an easy throw. Only one spot it could have landed. Great throw, incredible catch. Ball game coming out.
And you're saying not an easy throw, Kevin. Come on, man. You can probably count on your left hand how many can make that throw.
No doubt.
The degree of course, you get Terry the absolute kudos for catching it, but where he placed the ball and the conditions that he had to throw that under a zero blitz, and he got hit. I think he said he didn't even see the catch.
Oh yeah.
I mean, man, for me, that was it for me.
Yeah, that was certainly the. They got it right. That was remember he had really performed well against the Giants, but to your point, it was 7 field goals, and got lucky because the Giants didn't have a kicker, and Malik Neighbors dropped that 4th down late in the game. But that was the guess what, boys and girls, we got one. We finally got it right. Thanks, Reggie. Appreciate it. All right, everybody on hold. I see you there. Your number one moment, memorable moment from 2024. Mine is the Detroit win in the postseason. That was the closest from an emotional standpoint I have been with this team in a long time. It wasn't the same as it was years ago, but it was like, wow, that was in the highest profile of spots other than the Super Bowl and championship weekend. And just the idea that they were going to advance to a spot they hadn't been since 1991. I remember the next day was the snow game between the Eagles and the Rams. And at the end of that game, they put up, the graphic of the championship game matchups. And it's like, oh my God, Washington at Philadelphia. I don't like seeing Commanders at Eagles, but Washington at Philadelphia. And you're coming off what had happened the night before. Yeah. All right. I see everybody there. Promise I'll give you a shot. Your number one most memorable moment from last year. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980.
Comes down to one last play. And it's going to be getting longer by the second. You're all the way back at the 30-yard line. Now you can step into it. Here comes the Hail Mary with the game on the line. And the ball is caught! Caught! It's a miracle! It's Noah Brown! Oh my goodness! This town is going crazy! It's a madhouse in Landover, Maryland! We did it!
52 yards. Remember, it was the play before that one. That was massive. That 13-yard out to Terry McLaurin, Washington with no timeouts left. And Matt Eberflus, who was coaching at the time for Chicago, remember, said he did not consider that play to be significant at all. They would have never gotten a throw to the end zone without the throw that happened before it. And number 29, Tyreek Stevenson, will live in infamy for Bears fans on that particular play. One of the reasons Washington and Chicago are going in prime time in 2025 is because, of course, of that game. Always attractive, the top two picks from a draft, quarterbacks wise, but October 13th, Monday Night Football, Landover, the rematch, Washington and Chicago for the Skins. That'll be week 6. For me, my favorite and most memorable moment of 2024 was the divisional round playoff win in Detroit. What was it for you? 301-230-0980. Let's go to Aveen. Aveen, thanks for holding. Go ahead.
Hey, Kevin. It's the same thing, Detroit game for me. That's the best win of my lifetime. I still, go back a lot and watch the Jaden Daniel highlights from that game, which are crazy.
Yeah.
But going into that game, I didn't get why nobody nationally was really giving us much of a chance. We were kind of viewed as cannon fodder for the Lions. And I get the respect the Lions were getting, and they were 9.5-point favorite. And I get that's because they were a historically good offense, especially at home. They were nearly unbeatable at home, and that's probably the best Lions team in their team history. So I got that, but people didn't realize that we were an elite offense going into that game. And it just didn't make sense because we're an elite offense, and Detroit hasn't been playing good defense for the past month and a half. And Jaden Daniels, on a Saturday night in primetime in a dome, there was no way we weren't going to score a lot of points that game. But for Jaden Daniels that game, he was nearly perfect every time Detroit scored, and it felt like the game was teetering. He just so calmly, methodically, surgically led the team back on a long drive. And I think a lot of people were shocked by that. People who hadn't watched all our games this season, who hadn't seen that much of Jaden Daniels, that was a real kind of shocker game for them. I remember Jordan Schultz, who's this reporter from Fox Sports, I was going through my tweets looking back at this, and he said, text I got from NFL GM, Jaden Daniels is already the most poised quarterback in the NFC. I haven't seen anything like this before from a rookie quarterback. So I think that game just kind of confirmed to us and kind of showed the rest of the country that that's what an elite quarterback looks like, just constantly being able to answer backs calmly, methodically. It was very Brady-esque. And I'm not sure the rest of the country is, hyping Jaden as much this offseason and viewing him as QB5 and as a potential elite quarterback without that game, because that was definitely a signature game and the most memorable game from him.
Yeah, I think you're right. Look, he was already, an absolute lock to be the rookie of the year. He had already been discussed in terms of his season being the greatest rookie season in the history of the league at that position. He had already had the Hail Mary moment, the Monday night moment against Cincinnati. But there were a couple of moments like that. Remember the Thursday night game in Philadelphia? That was a rough game for not only him, but the team. And, there were, there were moments where people could say, yeah, but. And that Philadelphia game on Thursday night, he, for the only time since the opener, he looked confused. they looked confused. And it was the short turnaround after the Pittsburgh game. Philadelphia, I think, had smothered Dallas the week before. Short week to get ready for, one of the best coached defensive teams in the league. But no one had questions after 45-31 and 300 yards basically passing and another 50 rushing, and just the answers to every time Detroit scored. No doubt about it. Thanks, Savine. Let me get to some other calls. Let's go to our guy Lap. Is Lap still holding? Let's go to Lap. Lap, go ahead. What was your number one memory from 2024?
Hey, Kevin, man, a good point you made about the Detroit game, but I'm gonna go with the Bengals, man. I just think, everything that Jaden went through, at LSU, I think he really wanted to beat Joe Burrow that day.
Yep.
And really, display what he can really do. And then, all of the quarterbacks that we're talking about, better, Drake May, plus we'll see.
Yeah, thanks, Lap. Your phone's still not great. Appreciate it though. Cincinnati, that's the first moment. The week before they didn't score a touchdown, but remember that in a tie game, he drove them down the field. And I'm looking at the drive on after the Giants had tied it, they took over with 2:04 left. All right. They had all of their timeouts, tie game, their own 23-yard line, and he moved the ball right down the field for Seibert's game-winning field goal at the gun. I'm looking to kind of remember. Oh, he had the big throw to Noah Brown. It was 2nd and 10, and he had that huge throw over the middle of the field to Noah Brown for 34 yards, and that was the big play on that final drive. So we had already seen the week before, hey, man, this guy really played well compared to week 1 against Tampa, where it was more about his running, remember. He ended up in that game 23 of 29, 226 yards. It wasn't his best game overall, but it was a clutch ending to the game for him. All right, stay on hold. James, Paulie, Woody, Bay, Billy, anybody else? We'll do one more segment of this. What's your number one moment, your number one memory from the 2024 season? Kevin Sheehan Show on the Team 980, also the team980.com.
10 guys on the field. They're down in 7. This one is launched from McLaurin. He's got it. Touchdown. Touchdown, Terry McLaurin.
The 3rd and 7 Monday night touchdown throw to Terry McLaurin that gave Washington a 38-26 lead against the Bengals. And that really was the first moment of 2024. What's your number one moment of 2024? By the way, I'm pretty sure, if my memory serves me correctly, that hearing Troy Aikman say they only have 10 on the field, remember, I think he was wrong about that. I think they did have 11 on the field. That's what just jumped into my mind when I heard the play-by-play call with Buck and Aikman. I'll go back and look at that. But for whatever reason, I think he got it wrong, and there were 11 on the field on that 3rd and 7. 301-230-0980. What's your number one? My number one is the Lions game, the divisional round playoff win in Detroit, the most hostile of environments, such a high-profile spot. 9-point underdogs against the number 1 seed, and to go in and hang 31 on them in the first half, nearly 300 yards of offense in a half, to beat them 45-31, to force turnovers, and to just quiet that crowd. It seemed like the first moment, and it was, in 33 years, where it's like, wow, we just had a monumental win in the NFL. That was great. Before I get back to your calls, so there is some breaking news. We expected this, but Chairman Phil Mendelson, the city council chair, is going to hold a press conference here shortly. I'm going to read to you what he has tweeted out with respect to the RFK deal. Quote, "Today we're scheduling a vote for Friday, August 1st, 2025. So that would be a week from tomorrow, to consider the RFK campus legislation. We've been working with the Washington Commanders for several weeks, and we feel we have a much improved agreement that would bring the team back to their historical home, as well as develop the land around the RFK campus. It's clear that the Commanders showed through their negotiations their commitment to the district and their willingness to consider what's in the best interest of our citizens. The process working with the Commanders has been extremely productive, and they've been a cooperative partner. Overwhelmingly, residents have asked the council for due diligence on this multi-billion-dollar deal, and under immense outside pressure to rush the process, I feel that, along with next week's hearings, the council will have what's needed to move forward with the vote." And then he shows, he's got a graphic where he compares the original agreement, the original term sheet that the mayor negotiated with the team, and how he and his team have improved that deal. There is some competition, man, between the city council and Phil Mendelson in particular and the mayor. And he was definitely feeling the heat, not only from the mayor's office, not only from people like me, and even, I think, from the team, to, by the way, pick it up a little bit. Let's move a little bit faster. Let's show a little bit more urgency. But he was sensitive to that. And it looks like it's a better deal. I'm a tax-paying resident of the District of Columbia. I wanted a better deal. So good job by Phil Mendelson and the city council to get a better deal. And really good job by the mayor to make it happen originally. This is not unusual that the first term sheet, that's not a final deal. It's a term sheet. You know, anybody that's ever been involved in a business transaction, there's a term sheet and there are further negotiations that often take place, especially in an environment like this one where it has to pass another step, which was the city council. So it looks like we are 8 days away, 1 week from tomorrow, away from an easy, I would imagine, an easy yes vote on RFK. And now 2030 is in play. The mayor was on with the Junkies. We'll play some of that sound for you coming up in this hour. We're going to have a stadium at RFK in 2030. And I'm telling you, that means we are going to have a Super Bowl in D.C. in less than 10 years. I would put it in maybe the 2032 season, something like that, 2033. We'll end up having a Super Bowl here. Obviously, this is going to be a roofed stadium. Whether or not it's retractable, I have no idea. I'm assuming that the architects and the design, it's still conceptual, but we know that it's going to be a roofed, domed stadium because you can't generate the kind of revenue they want to generate from this stadium without it. You've got to be able to host events like concerts during the wintertime, like a Super Bowl, which the NFL, after the Meadowlands Super Bowl in 2013, said we'll never do an outdoor stadium in a cold weather city again. They survived that by, remember, about 12 hours, because about 12 hours after the game, an 8 to 10 inch snowstorm came in. Imagine had it been earlier. It would have ruined the Super Bowl game. NFL can't have that. They can have that in a championship game. They can have that in the playoffs. Can't have that in the Super Bowl. We're less than 10 years away from hosting a Super Bowl. And so good job by the mayor. Okay. It certainly looks like Chairman Mendelson wants to take all the credit for this, along with the city council. But congratulations to him and the city council as well. This is normal. Somebody negotiates the term sheet, but because it's not a finalized deal, there is room for negotiation. There's room to make it better, by the way, on both sides. So good job by DC. Good job by the team. It would appear as if this is a win-win for everybody. And unlike many other cities that tend not to want to fund or help billionaire owners build stadiums, this city is in favor of it. I am. Can't wait. Not just for the football, but for everything that may be coming to our city. This is a great city and will be a great host for some big events over the next 25 years, beginning in 2030 and beyond. All right. Back to your favorite moment of 2024. Again, for me, the most exhilarated, the most feeling like I used to feel as a fan, the closest I've been to it was that Saturday night in late January against the Lions. That 45-31 playoff win. I'm telling you, we had a younger caller earlier, and for my boys as well, it'll be the first just all-time memory. The Tampa game the week before might be, and certainly the Hail Mary will be as well. There are a lot of moments from last year, but that stage to play that well in that environment, and it was unexpected, not by us. Remember, a lot of us felt like we got a shot as long as 5 is on the field and the offense is out there. Nobody's going to stop us offensively. The big question about that game was, could you keep Detroit from scoring 40+? And the turnover battle obviously was massive in that game, as it would become the following week in Philadelphia for the wrong reasons. Paulie, go ahead.
Big guy, hail to the W. How you doing?
What's up, big fella?
It's funny because you're saying the most your favorite moment, right? But in my mind, I just keep feeling and thinking my most favorite Jaden Daniels moment.
Yeah, right.
How about when Roger Goodell called his name at the draft?
Yeah.
That's the most favorable moment. Nah, but it got to be for me the Eagles game, man. The 5 touchdowns and bringing us back. Not even just the 5 touchdowns throwing, him running the ball. He was unstoppable in that fourth quarter, man. I mean, I know the fact that he even threw the picks. And still
he threw that bad pick and came back off of it. Yeah.
Right. You know what I mean? I was just like, man, like we really do got a Patrick Mahomes type quarterback here, man. This is crazy. And I think that led into, for the rest of the season of, we got a chance every game. So I would say that Eagles game, man, on 5 touchdowns. a close second for me is the Tampa Bay game, the playoff game in Tampa Bay, where everybody in their mama knew on that fourth down that he was going to run the ball.
Right.
Even Tampa's defense, because they was all over him, and all they got was his towel, and he still picked up the first down. So,
by the way, talking about runs, back to your number one, the 4th and 15 or whatever it was, when they went for it, late third quarter, down 13, I think it was, 27-14, and he takes off and runs like 30 yards, and it was like so easy.
And really one little quick move, he could have took that to the distance. He could have took that one to the distance, man.
Yeah.
But I was just telling Chris, like, I feel about Jaden, and I know the opposing teams got to feel about Jaden, almost how I feel about when we play Saquon Barkley. Like, you can't stop this dude, man. He's going to do what he wants to do. So I would say the Eagles game,
but the ball's in his hands on every play. That's the difference.
Every play. Right. But that Eagles game, they couldn't stop him in that fourth quarter, passing or running. And the one time they did stop him with the interception, it's almost like it just fueled his fire even more. Like, you can't. He refused to let us lose that game, man. So, like I said, my favorite moments I'm getting confused with because all I can see is Jaden Daniels, man. Like, my favorite moment.
Every big moment he was involved. Was there a big defensive moment at any point during the season?
You know what? I'm gonna tell you a big defensive moment in the game. You said the Detroit game. That interception.
Yeah,
the
Quan Martin.
Mikey. No.
Oh, the Sanders still end of half. Yeah.
That was a big interception.
That was big.
Right there. Because that kept us ahead. Before the half.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that was a big play. But yeah, man, Jaden Daniels, man, walking across that stage with Roger Goodell. That's the most memorable moment.
All right, I'll talk to you later. Appreciate it. Let's go to our guy, Billy. Billy, go ahead. Your favorite moment, number one moment of 2024.
Kevin, the whole season was phenomenal. And as a group of fans, we all will never experience anything like that, to have 4-12 and then to go to the NFC Championship and have found the best quarterback probably who's going to be in 4-13. Dismal season. I remember the worst game from that 4-13 season was the Chicago game. That was horrendous, but it was
right,
just an unbelievable season.
Yeah.
Holy crow. I mean, my wife had to hide the razor blades. The Detroit game was number one. Obviously, I was in Vegas with my brother, Chantilly 5. It was fantastic. Vegas was insane. The whole world got to witness JD5. The Eagles game, amazing. 5 turnovers in that Eagles game and down 21-7 in the first quarter. And was there anybody listening right now when we had the ball with 10 seconds left and 10 yards to go for a touchdown that didn't say, this guy JD5 is going to throw a touchdown pass? And there's Crowder, boom, touchdown. Fantastic. The Bengals game, 2-0-2. 21 of 23 for 254, 2 touchdowns. The resurrection game, that throw to Terry. And let's get Terry in training camp, and just so fired up for the season. Thanks, brother.
Thanks, Billy. Appreciate it. Let's go to Woody. Woody, what was your number one moment in 2024?
Hey, Kevin. Thanks for having me on. Long time, first time.
Well, good to have you, Woody.
Mine
Thanks.
is the Browns. Oh, great to be on. Mine is the Browns game. I've been on the other side of that so many times where you don't have a quarterback that it was real nice to be on the other side of it for once. And it started to feel normal. I think that put us to 4-1, and it started to feel like we were just going to be a team that could beat up on lesser teams. And that the pass to De'Ami Brown, and then
the pass to De'Ami late in the half,
Oh, it was great. And then to find out that was Jaden's idea, and that Kingsbury went with it, you could just feel it all starting to happen. So, and there's nothing better than just a stress-free Sunday, So I always
he had the pass. He had the big throw to Terry early in that game, right? That big bomb that he threw to Terry early in the game.
And that was he rolled out. He avoided the sack and rolled out, and that was a question to that point. Does he keep his eyes down the field when he escapes the pocket?
Yeah.
So to see it happen was just like a culmination of, you weren't sure what we were seeing was real yet. And for me, the Cleveland game was, I think what we're seeing is for real. I think this is going to be interesting. So
I'm looking at it right now. Yeah, it was their second drive,
really
3rd and 13 to Terry for 66 yards. But then he threw an interception at the goal line to Owusu Koromoa. I don't remember that.
Yeah. It was. It kind of put a little stink on it, but it's still. I mean, they could have gotten 10 interceptions that game. When you don't have a quarterback, you don't have a chance in this league. And like I said, we've all been on the wrong side of that a lot. So it's nice to be on the other side of it now.
Thanks for the call. Appreciate it. That would not have been anywhere near on my list, the Cleveland game. But I do remember that particular game was like the first game in which I said, there is a problem developing. And it was their inability to stop the run, because the week before that, they had blown out Arizona, but James Conner had rushed for over 100 yards and like 6 yards per carry. And then Cleveland, with no threat, zero threat to throw the football, because Deshaun Watson was just not interested in playing football anymore. And they were averaging with their running backs over 5 yards per carry. And again, it was a blowout win. But I remember at that point, I'm like, we do have a problem. And Derrick Henry was the next week. And it was like, if you can't stop Derrick Henry, you got no shot to win the game. And they didn't stop him. And Henry, went for like 6 yards a carry. And I remember that Cleveland game thinking, God, when you can't throw the football at all, and you're still rushing the football for 5 yards a carry with your running backs, that is at least a slightly, pinkish, reddish flag on what they were going to be defensively that year. Let's go to Bay. Bay, go ahead. Your number one 2024 moment from the season was what?
What's up, Kevin? Thanks for taking my call. My number
Bay.
one game was the Carolina game. We finally got something that we all been waiting for Darrell Green jersey to get retired. I remember that first quarter and Jaden Daniels, it was like I was holding my breath all season. Learn how to protect yourself. He got hurt in that game. Yeah. And the way this team rallied behind that, and then to see that halftime show when the fans were going crazy as Darrell Green gave that speech, and then Lulu and then Tim, they came out and they put a horrific scar on that offense, man. I mean, it was so beautiful to see that in our house, to rejoice that we, after messing up the Sean Taylor trophy and all this other stuff, they got it right. We won that game for Darrell Green. Normally we would lose after something like that, and we put it on him, man. I am so glad of that guy. I really learned a lot, and I think Jaden Daniels learned a lot as fans as well, how much he really can take and how much of a competitor he is. Thanks for taking my call, Kevin.
Yeah, sure, Bay. I mean, look, you took us back again, like the Cleveland game. The Carolina game would not have been on my list, Darrell Green's jersey retired or not. But it was an interesting point in the season because Mariota came in. Remember the first possession? They basically went backwards with Mariota, and I was like, uh-oh. And then he settled down, and he was awesome. The first plays for Mariota were 4-yard run, sacked, penalty, false start, incompletion, punt. And it was like we hadn't been watching many punts at any point during the season. But I think what I remember most about that game in that stretch of football was this is the one flaw. This is the one concern is look at his frame. He had been banged up in the Giant game in week 2. And then, being taken out on that long run in the Carolina game with the rib injury. And then we had the entire following week. Would he or wouldn't he play against Chicago? And then, by the way, after the Chicago game, I think the Giant game on the road was one of the best games for Jaden all year long. That's why during that stretch when everybody said he's hurt, and I was talking to people and they're like, he wouldn't be out there if he was hurt. And that Giant game was his highest QBR game of the regular season. He was phenomenal in that game against a really good defense. Let's go to James. James, your number one moment from 2024 was what?
I would have to say it was the Atlanta game. And the reason why I say the Atlanta game in the playoffs is because
the Atlanta game was not in the playoffs. That was at the end of the regular season.
I mean, the game to go to the playoffs, to get the playoffs.
To clinch the playoff berth.
So, to clinch it. So I was watching this game with my wife, and we held them to a field goal, and it was tied. And they gave the ball back to Jaden, and he marched down the field and hit the old man for the touchdown at the end of the game. I looked at her and said, we got a cold-blooded assassin right here. He is top of the pole. He is one of these guys that I ain't never seen. I didn't even think Washington would ever get a quarterback like this. I've been watching since Joe Theismann. You know what I mean? Since Joe Jacoby, Russ Grimm, Charlie Brown. I've been watching it since I was a little dude. Yeah. And that's always been my team. But
that overtime drive, they won the toss, they took the ball, touchdown ends the game. It won't this year. Remember, the overtime rule changed, and everybody's now guaranteed at least one possession.
Another shot.
But he literally, remember, was near exhaustion. He rushed for like 50 yards on that drive, and Mariota came out. They called the timeout, and then he threw on the third down the touchdown pass to Ertz. That was spectacular.
Mariota whispered in his ear, "Hey, use your God-given ability," and he went on out there and shot one down the middle. And look, Ertz. I like Ertz, man. People don't give Ertz enough. They don't love on Ertz enough.
Daniels last year.
He was clutch all year.
Jaden, 16 carries, 127 yards in the Atlanta game.
Yes.
He had 40 yards rushing on that overtime drive.
On that one sequence, yes.
Unbelievable.
He's far.
What a memory.
I'm in Louisville, Kentucky, okay? I live in Louisville, but my team always been Washington, always, since I knew football. So I'm so happy because it's been so long. Man, you know how I used to play Washington? Washington was my team on Madden, the old Madden on Sega Genesis.
Yeah, I remember that.
And
that's the one I
and I used to play the hell out of.
Yeah.
And I had Gary Clark, I had Art Monk, Ricky Sanders. I had Ernest Biner out the backfield. Oh man, I love that game. But we've been crap for so many years. We had opportunities here and there. We made a couple strides in some years. It wasn't nothing like this. I'm sure we are going to be the dominant team in the NFC now.
Thanks,
sure
James.
we are.
Yeah, good call. Really appreciate it. Let me get to some others. I think I remember Sega Genesis Madden. I remember some very late nights playing that with friends. And the team that I always used was Buffalo, because Jim Kelly and Andre Reed and all of those weapons, Thurman Thomas, they were unstoppable. Bobby in North Carolina, your number one moment from 2024.
Hey, Kev. I know I've been calling you a long time. You sure not our brothers down the line somewhere? Because we think too much alike. I'm going to the Detroit game. That was a special Saturday night.
Yeah.
It was just awesome, Kev. I mean, the whole season was awesome. If you go back and what you're doing now, asking people, if you go back and replay it, Kev, it was just very magical. And I think when we got done that Saturday night and it hit me, we were 60 minutes from getting back to the Super Bowl. That was, it gives me chills right now even talking about it, man. But that Saturday night in Detroit, because they were probably the favorite to make the Super Bowl, and we went to their house, and they were coming off a bye, and we took it to them, Kev. It was a total team effort. Defense stepped up, made some plays for us. It was just a good game all the way around. But the whole season, Kevin, I mean, it was just, it's just magical. But the Detroit game is my game that I'm pointing to as my favorite for the year.
There was something, for people like us, Bobby, that was like the first time it was like, wow. First of all, hadn't been in that round in 19 years.
Yeah.
Had not been in that round, the second round in 19 years. And to be in that round and play in that environment, the last time they had been in that round, they had played in Seattle after the 2005 season. They beat Tampa on the road, remember, like they did this year. And they went to Seattle, which was another harsh environment. And they had Brunell. They were limited offensively, but they still were in that game because Gibbs just, he was able to extract anything from chicken salad out of chicken, with every one of his teams that were hurt, and that team was hurt. But that moment,
Carlos makes that interception, we win that game, maybe. Carlos
Carlos Rogers has 10-0 in his hands in the second quarter, and dropped it.
Exactly.
But there was just something about being back in that round and then being the high-profile Saturday night primetime game. And, the expectations that you're going to get your ass kicked. And I think all of us knew, be careful. We're not stopped. Nobody stops us. And Detroit was banged up defensively going into that game. And it was an ass kicking. It really was. And to quiet that crowd, it felt like a throwback to when we would go to Chicago, we'd go to Minnesota, go to Philly, and win these, the all-time favorite playoff game for me in terms of a revenge game was the Eagles game back in 90 when they had lost the body bag game in November, and then they went to the vet and won easily, and Buddy Ryan ran off the field with 10 seconds to go. Wouldn't even shake Gibbs' hand. It didn't feel like that in terms of the context of the game, but when you go on the road and you play like that and you win in that spot, that is an all-time memory. Obviously, winning the whole thing will top that, but they didn't do that last year. Bobby, thanks, as always. Let's go to Steve in Columbia. Steve, your number one memory from last year. Go ahead.
Well, it's difficult to drop it down to just one, but just let me preface this by saying that I went to LSU. LSU has been my team my whole life, and my freshman semester, my first semester, I lived in Death Valley. My dorm room was built into the stadium, so that's how much I have about LSU. And when I started watching Jaden Daniels play in 22, I thought he was going to win the Heisman Trophy in 2023, of which he did. And I just love this guy. And so certainly my biggest one is that we went 4-12 or 4-13 in a year that we needed to in order to get the draft pick to pick him. So I have to go back to that. But the draft pick, we got him. They didn't go for, that Chicago took Williams and
never even met with Jaden Daniels, by the way. That's still amazing to me if
Can
it's
you believe
actually
that?
true.
I mean, and what are they doing? They're sitting back there now and they're looking at what we've got and what we did last year. And what they did was something that Snyder would have done.
Yeah, 100%. Now, look, the
at
Caleb Williams story has not been written yet. I mean, you don't write somebody off after 1 year. So we'll see what happens. But by the way, you being an LSU guy, right, Steve, quick back to 23. I actually was in a conversation recently with an LSU guy. And if you were listening to me, I love Jaden in 22, but in 23, I'm like, this is the best quarterback in the country, and hopefully we keep losing to have a shot at him. But if they had just a bad defense instead of one of the worst defenses in recent modern college football history, he would have won the national championship on top of the Heisman.
I'm sorry. You just stuck a knife in my heart. Absolutely. And here's the thing too. So many people down there feel as though Joe Burrow was a better quarterback. And I looked at this guy, and I would say online, and I was on LSU blogs and stuff like that, and I say, he's better than Joe Burrow.
Yeah.
He's better than Joe Burrow. Now, by much, no, it's not a whole lot, but he is better, and there's a whole lot of reasons why we could go through, and we're not going to get into that right now. But I felt that he was a better quarterback, and certainly if he'd had any semblance of a defense down there, He took us to the year before. He took us to the championship.
Yeah,
SEC
I don't think they
championship
would have
against
lost the game that
Georgia.
year had their defense been bad instead of historically awful. Steve,
Right.
I got to run.
Now, let me
Appreciate the call. All of you that I missed out on, maybe we'll take a few more on the other side. Stay on hold. I want to hear you. You guys have been on hold for a while. We're going to get to what Mayor Bowser said on the Junks earlier today. And Ben Standig will join us from training camp at 12. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com. So for those just joining, we are, kind of reminiscing about 2024. Number one most memorable moment of 2024. For me, it was the Detroit game. But there is some breaking news, not related to any on the field stuff. They are working right now. Quinn spoke before practice, and we'll hear from some players after practice. Ben will join us in about 25 minutes. But Phil Mendelson, the D.C. Council chair, announced that they will vote on the RFK deal a week from tomorrow, August 1st. And, of course, it will pass. And Mendelson is touting major changes for the better from the original deal that haircut back in late April with the team, and that Mendelson and the city council have negotiated what he believes to be a much better deal that will add an incremental $674 million in revenue over a 30-year period. If that's true, congratulations. And these things happen this way. You get a term sheet, and then you got that next step, which is the city council. And hopefully this is, what they were able to do. And congrats to them, the city council. But I don't want to lose, any sort of understanding that Mayor Bowser was significant in this process as well, in getting the team and getting in a deal that could be, further negotiated to get to this spot. And we're not waiting until mid-September. August 1st, they're on recess, but they're going to get this thing voted on, and it will end up being, 17 days after the July 15th deadline, leaving plenty of time for the team to get this thing started and have it open in the year 2030. All right, we're going to just take a few more calls. You guys have been holding for a while. Jason in Florida wants to weigh in on his number one moment of 2024. My number one was the divisional round win in Detroit. What about you, Jason? Go ahead. Thanks for holding.
Hey, what's up, Kevin? Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
My number one moment was definitely the breakout game of JD5 that Monday night against Cincinnati. Everybody knew Cincinnati couldn't go down 0-3 for the season, so we were prepared to go blow for blow. And JD5, he answered the call. He performed well. I think he was like 91 in pass completions.
Right, 21 out of 23.
Yeah, and that deep bomb to Terry, like at the end of the game, like, oh my God, like that's when I knew like we had a star. So yeah. I love that moment.
Thanks, Jason. Great delivery too. That was understated and cool. Steve, my guy in Houston. What's up, thug?
What's up, you dude? Hey, brother.
What was your favorite moment?
Oh, man, why you ask this question? There's too many. You see how hard it's been on all the callers.
Yeah.
I'm going to switch it up. I was going with Detroit. I think Detroit is in a special place because that's, playoffs and all of the odds were against us. And that, the clips from that radio show guy, with all that big trash talk, that was classic.
Oh, right.
But,
right. Yeah. That guy, I had him on the show, right? And he's like, you guys have no shot.
Yeah. And he kept talking about, what you did in Tampa won't be repeated in Detroit. He was
right.
going there, but that was good. But my favorite moment.
I think his name was Mark Ryan from the Detroit Lions radio station, The Ticket in Detroit. I think that's who it was. I've got several lines. I can't remember. I think that was him, but he basically came on and trolled our team on the show.
Yeah, he did.
And I said to him, I said, have you watched Jaden Daniels? Are you sure about this? But we wanted to undersell ourselves. Keep the bar low. Yeah.
Exactly. But let me go to my favorite moment. I switched it up to the Eagles game. The game where we had 5 turnovers. And I think, were we at home? Was that our home game against the Eagles?
Yeah, December 22nd. Yep.
And 10 seconds left on the clock, no timeouts. And I think we're at the, 15, 20 red zone pretty much. And I think, with 10 seconds, maybe 2 plays. And when he hit Jamison Crowder in the end zone, unbelievable, man. Unbelievable.
Cornelius Lucas definitely false started on that play. I had an Eagles fan remind me of that a few weeks back, and I went and looked at it, and they did get away with it. But you know what? That would have just pushed it back 5 yards, and he would have thrown the touchdown on the next play. Yeah, it was just an amazing comeback. And overcoming 5 turnovers in that game is insane against that defense. That was what was
Yeah,
nuts.
I mean, with those odds, that's almost impossible, man. 5 turnovers, but we pulled it off. JD5, baby.
Yeah. Thanks, Steve. Appreciate it. Jim, Salisbury, Maryland. Go ahead.
I have to say, Kevin, had to be the Detroit game. I just sat on my couch the whole game in stunned silence. I didn't say a word. It was just unbelievable. It was the most. It brought me back. You know what I'm saying? It brought me back to watching the team again. Just crazy, man.
That was nuts. It really was. As we've been going through this part of the show, I've been looking at all my notes on the Detroit game, and when they put Mariota in the game on that first 4th down on the first drive and he got stopped and Detroit took the ball over, went down and scored, I'm like, damn. I'm like, that was a moment in the game that you weren't going to be able to get back. And it's like, why would you have Mariota on the field when you have Jaden Daniels? You didn't need to get tricky in that spot. But from that moment on, they basically, I think, punted one time and they missed a field goal, and that was it. It was all touchdowns. It was all, big play after big play. It was so impressive. Thanks, Jim. All right, 2 more. Thanks. Matt, go ahead. Matt, your number 1 moment from 24.
Hey, Kevin, just a little bit of context to this. I grew up in Alexandria back in the 80s. Went to the We Want Dallas game, the NFC Championship. Lifelong Skins fan, and I was able to take my teenage son to the Tampa playoff game and share that experience. That was his first game. We live not far from downtown Tampa, so it was an awesome experience. My heart stopped when that ball hit that goalpost, and I just wanted to share that with you, and I appreciate you taking the call.
Yeah, I appreciate you calling in. The thing about that Tampa game, and you were there, but the Detroit game, not a lot of our fans. The Tampa game, remember, there were a lot of Skins fans in Tampa.
It was like a home game. I was astonished. I was astonished. I'd never been to an away game where there'd been anywhere close to that number of burgundy and gold. It was overwhelming.
Yeah, what a football game. The key play in that game was the Baker Mayfield fumble. When they were deep in their own territory with the lead in the 4th quarter. And he fumbled.
You're going to laugh at this. You're going to laugh at this. Before that snap, I looked at my son and I said, it's about time for Baker to be Baker. And that, no joke, not 3 seconds later, he fumbled the ball.
You know what, though?
We have
I like him.
That since.
I've become a Baker Mayfield fan. I think the dude's a badass. I
got
do.
Heart. There's no question. You can't teach that. You can't teach some of the stuff he's got instinctively. Yeah.
Thanks,
but I'll
Matt.
I'll never not be a Washington fan, and it feels so good for us to feel like at least we're on the right track, because I have been down that long, dusty road for 30 years now, and it's been painful.
Yeah. That stretch of those 2 weeks were fun. All right, Big Law, finish it up for us. Go ahead.
All right, appreciate that, Kevin. Yeah, Big Law, 7 Cities, down here in Hampton Roads, man. So you asked for some defensive plays. Defensive play I got to bring up, which made me really start to believe this was a viable thing, was the Dante Fowler interception against the Carolina Panthers. And I was like, wait a minute. I said, we got something. I said, the luck has finally turned for us. And to have him take that pick 6 back by a defender, it reminded me of when LeVar Arrington did it. And my big play was when Zach Ertz caught that touchdown against the Atlanta Falcons at the end of the game to end it.
Yeah.
That right there, I jumped up on that, man. That was phenomenal. But keep it rocking, baby. You're doing a great job as always.
Thanks.
And, we'll be down here listening,
Appreciate it, Big Law. All right. Didn't think we would go that long on it, but we got some good memories of 2024. All right. I want to play some of what Mayor Bowser said on the Junkies this morning. But the breaking stadium news, it's official. They're going to vote August 1st. Phil Mendelssohn touting a much better deal that the city council was able to create. I'm just telling you, I'm not taking any credit away from the mayor. It certainly seems to be his intention to take all of the credit for this. Everybody gets credit for this, both sides too, the team and the city. But they're going to vote a week from tomorrow, and the votes will be there, and it will be finalized that the RFK 2030 opening, that project will begin. Of course, the wild card, as we know, is 47. But hopefully this process has started and it will become official a week from Friday. You'll hear some of what the mayor said this morning with the Junks. Next, Ben Standig will join us from training camp at noon. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com.
Did Goodell promise? It's probably already publicly known, but if you get a new stadium, you get a Super Bowl, right? That's a given. That's a given.
Lock for a
what
Super
other
Bowl.
things can we
Lock
it up? Lock. What other things do we get besides the Super Bowl? We're gonna get Final Four.
You could get Final Four. You could get WWE. You could get some college
World
playoff.
Cup.
You could get
college
Final
big
Four.
concerts.
music. You can get Taylor Swift, Beyonce.
Yep.
You know what happened at the Beyonce concert recently? People were like, what is going on at this stadium?
Right.
Mayor Bowser earlier this morning on with the Junkies, a Super Bowl being, you heard her interject, lock. Yeah, within 10 years, Washington's going to host a Super Bowl. The breaking news, which we expected yesterday, Chairman Mendelson, the council chair, announced today and held a press conference that they are going to vote on August 1st, a week from tomorrow. And obviously, they're going to take a vote because they've got the votes to pass the deal that he described as a much better deal and much more advantageous for the city and its tax-paying residents than the original deal. But don't overlook the work the mayor put in getting the original term sheet done. That is a long slog to get that done. And good job by the council to perhaps improve the deal that the mayor had cut back in late April. So a week from tomorrow, it looks like we will have a go-ahead. And then, I guess the next big event would be the groundbreaking, when they break ground on the RFK site and begin the process of building out not only a stadium, but what will become, I think in some ways like the Wharf and other areas, a destination for the DMV, for the region. Looking forward to that. 5 years away from it, but looking forward to it. This was Mayor Bowser on the stadium design. This is what she told the Junkies.
I have, and I'm talking a little bit ahead of school because out of school. I'm talking a little bit out of school because we're always anticipating the right thing happening. And so when we get an approval, we want to be ready to go. We want to be ready with all the environmental, all the design. So I've had a couple of discussions with the design teams that the Commanders have brought on. And only when they get an approval, though, can they go 100%.
Okay. Did we learn anything from that about the design? That soundbite?
I think what they were asking was, have you seen the design? And her answer was like, yes, but I can't really talk on it.
Okay.
That's kind of what it sounded like.
All right. So it'll be exciting when we see the mock-ups. I mean, there have been mock-ups that have been out there on the internet, on social media before, but I don't think they've been the actual chosen architectural drawings for the team. I'm actually interested in that process. Like, is it Josh Harris and the team that drives that process? Or I would think the city would have to have a say-so because there are building requirements, right? We have a very unique city in terms of its skyline. We have, building height requirements, unlike every other city in the country. So not that a stadium is going to exceed that height, clearly, but the retail, the commercial, the residential around it. Anyway, this was the mayor on pregame tailgating at the new stadium. Here's what she said.
They don't have to worry about that. People drove in and out of RFK for years. Remember all those championships? It's going to be bigger, but there are also more transportation options than when the football team played there before. We have more public bus. We have more people taking scooters. We have ride share like through the roof. This is a transit town. People are not single occupant vehicle drivers in DC like they are in other places. So they're quite used to going to RFK. And by the way, we have a whole corridor that's waiting for these fans on H Street Northeast. So we want people to pregame at the stadium. And yes, they will be able to tailgate. And we want people to stop at all of the restaurants and eateries along the way, like on H Street Northeast, which is just a hop, skip, and a jump from the new stadium.
Yeah, that H Street corridor in Northeast is awesome. There will be a lot of options, prior to games. But the area surrounding the stadium will be option A. And it sounds like tailgating, even if it's parking, above ground parking, even if that ends up being a part of it. Here's the last soundbite that we wanted to play of the mayor, who was on with the Junkies earlier this morning, talking about RFK being the perfect location.
Was I blown away by it? No, because I thought they they could see the opportunity. Like this is not like a in my opinion, now I'm the mayor, like a hard sell RFK. Like it is perfect for the football experience, the views, and the importance. You know, Roger Goodell was at our announcement for a reason. Okay, so it's important to the team, it's important to the league.
It is. I mean, it's the only location. I mean, any other location, the cost probably would have been, times five. And it's right there up against the Anacostia River. It's a massive piece of land. It is now leased for the next 100 years. There is history, tradition, and there's an opportunity to take a very blighted, large piece of land and turn it into something special for the city. In many ways, I'm excited that the team will end up back on the RFK site. When all is said and done, it will be literally 33 years later, right? Moved out in 97 was the first year in Landover. They'll be in 2030. So 33 years. Put it this way. It was essentially 33 years that the team was at RFK before they moved. They moved in 61, moved out at the end of the 96 season. So 35 years at RFK. Remember this too, and I've said this a few times. Given the season the team just had, the problem with Landover was twofold. One, a stadium built, basically overnight, and it was a bad stadium. We know what the, ingress, egress, degress, all of the to and froms were nightmares with that stadium. But the other problem was they didn't have a good team ever in Landover. But these next 5 seasons, 25, 26, 27, 28, and 29, 5 more seasons with this team and this quarterback, the most memories in Landover will be made on the way out of Landover. It's very possible they're going to host many playoff games over the next 5 years, and maybe even an NFC championship game or two over the next 5 years. I'm getting ahead of myself for sure, but based on what we saw and based on what we think the quarterback will be, the best memories of Landover, Northwest Field now, will be in the final 5 years before the move to RFK. And it's very possible that some incredible lasting franchise memories will be made on the way out of Landover. Ben Standig from Ashburn, day 2 of training camp practices next. All right, let's head out to Ashburn where they are done. Day 2 practice, day 3 where they all had to officially be in, and no Terry McLaurin once again. Ben Standig joins us right now from camp. He'll join us every day from camp. And let's just start with, any news related to anything.
Well, I guess the big news, I assume you talked about it already, involves things that are happening in the D.C. government, not out here in Ashburn. No real news. I mean, obviously, nothing new on the Terry McLaurin front, as far as we know. A couple guys were out today just for a vet rest day, Laramie Tunsil, Noah Brown, and Von Miller. Other than that, no news per se. Just, they practiced. I think it was a little more of a, like I said yesterday, a little more of a walkthrough-ishy type practice. I think today felt more like something akin to what we might see later on this summer. But no news otherwise.
Can you learn anything from the way they're lining up, especially in 11 on 11 on day 2 of actual work in terms of depth chart?
I would generally say no. Dan Quinn was asked today. Yesterday, Andrew Wiley was working with the ones over Josh Connerly, and he was asked exactly that. And he said, no, we're just going to keep rotating guys around. And then the fact that Laramie Tunsil, was out today, they had Wiley on the left side, Connerly on the right side. And, I was like looking at when Jaden Daniels was in there was a mishmash of.
You said Laramie Tunsil. So was it just a rest day? Are they going to take, their veterans and give them ample rest even early in training camp?
Yeah, that's going to be a constant theme. Yeah.
All right. So Wiley was the first guy in at tackle without Laramie Tunsil being there, is what you're saying.
Well, no, Wiley was actually with the ones yesterday as well, but they had him and Connerly today, both Wiley on the left side, on the right. The bottom line is there's no rhyme or reason, I think, right now. I mean, when Jaden was in there today, there was all kinds of sort of backup types who were with him. Just, they're just moving guys in around. And like at running back, like Austin Eckler and Brian Robinson weren't doing much today in 11s. So a lot of just different people out there. So, yeah, it's too early to read in anything. I'm not saying we have to wait for the pads for that, but probably have to wait at least a few more days, and then we'll start to get a better feel.
I didn't ask you this yesterday, but it was, for a moment, an off-season conversation. What kind of shape is Deebo Samuel in?
I mean, I think he looks fine. I think he's, I wasn't getting worked up when everybody was making fun of him for the one video where people were saying he looked a little chunky and running slow. He looks fine to me. So, yeah, I mean, to actually make a good point, I didn't look at the official weight for him. They put that out yesterday once everybody passed their physicals. So I didn't actually look to see where he was at there or with what they were listing him as at. But, yeah, no, I think he's looked fine. I haven't noticed anything. And, we'll see if he's getting vet rest days as well. I think, like I said, they're going to not put too much on some of these guys. But Deebo is one of those where you kind of want to see him getting pushed out there to play, in part because of the last year he wasn't clearly in the best shape, and injuries have been a bugaboo here and there. So for a guy like that, I would maybe say Marshawn Lattimore also, like being out there as much as possible, to me is a good indication that they're ready to go. If they start needing as many rest days as these sort of older guys like Von Miller, that's a little bit different.
You mentioned Marshawn Lattimore, and I was going to ask about him. We're talking, of course, to Ben Standig. Ben now has a Substack account. This is where he is writing. I urge you to go to Ben's Twitter account, X account, at Ben Standig, and you can link to lastmanstandig.substack.com. And I know you've got a deal going on right now, right, for the week?
Yeah, no, I appreciate you bringing this up. Yeah, deal right now for annual and monthly subscriptions. It's like 20% off here for the first week. Just to, try to get everybody to take a look, and hopefully people do. It's honestly the response has been really, really great, and I'm so humbled by everybody doing that and showing their support. So yeah, please come on board, take a look, and if you followed me before and you've listened to me here with Kevin, I get so many people who tell me, yeah, I didn't read your stuff, but I listened to you on Kevin. I'm like, cool, whatever it takes. And I appreciate you listening to Kevin as well. So, yeah, come on by and, take a look, and hopefully we can get you on board.
Well, I urge everybody to read you too, because I think you do a phenomenal job. All right. So, one of the things that we, observed during the free agency period is the effort to get bigger on defense, especially up front. What does Javon Kinlaw look like in person, size-wise?
As it were, like, some people can be listed the same height or weight, and yet it just looks different. Right. He's like one of those kinds of guys. Yeah. Whatever he's listed at 6'5", whatever the exact weight is, he's just a specimen. The gods, created this guy, and it's really impressive on athletic. It's funny though, because he's wearing number 52, which is a linebacker number. So I feel like the linebacker number is almost making him look a little smaller, if that makes sense. Yeah. Yeah, he's a huge guy. He's been working, again, we're not taking too much into where everybody's lining up right now, but he's been working primarily with the twos that I've noticed the last couple of days, which is, not the defensive tackle rotation is going to be fascinating, considering you've got the established guy in Deron Payne, you got the second-round pick last year in Johnny Newton, you got a run stuffer in Eddie Goldman, and you have Kinlaw, who they gave the 3-year, $45 million contract to. For the most part, you can't play more than two of those guys at a time. So how does that rotation play out? I think will be a really interesting thing. But he's big. And when we've talked to the players who were here last year about the added size, including a Dietrich Wise, they're like, yeah, we definitely are a lot bigger. And they all seem to think it's going to be a big help against the run and just overall.
We heard a lot of complimentary thoughts about Deron Payne. Remember, during OTAs and minicamp, I mean, Quinn went out of his way, Witt Jr. went out of his way to sort of isolate and identify Deron as really looking good and really Quinn even mentioned him the other day in the introductory press conference. So should we expect that this could be, it's not a contract year technically. He's got a year left on his deal, but it could be a John Allen situation after this upcoming season. Like, I feel Deron has a chance to have one of those seasons like he had in 2022. Do you think they feel the same way out there?
I think like you said, when they were really talking him up back in OTAs and minicamp, I remember one day I asked Joe Witt, just like, hey, you're obviously trying to get a look at these guys now they're coming back off their off seasons. Who's been standing out to you? And Deron was the one he went to right away. And, whether that's them wearing, burgundy colored glasses, or that's the reality, or that's the motivation, or whatever, they seem to be talking him up in that regard. That would be huge. Forget, I already hear, because whenever this comes up, people always say, yeah, but I wouldn't want to sign him again after if it's another contract year. Don't worry about that later. In terms of this team this year, as we know, up front, they don't really have one dynamic guy. I mean, Frankie Louvu is obviously a big threat off the edge. They just got Von Miller, but there's not one true defensive lineman that is creating double teams and all that. And he has the potential to be that guy. We saw it in 2022 when he was at 11.5 sacks. But for the most part of his career, he's been, under 5 sacks. And, he was fine the last couple of years. It's just he wasn't worthy of a guy getting paid the money he's getting paid, or not to mention, in the discussions with guys like Dexter Lawrence and Carter up in Philadelphia, who, are just proven to be more, play in, play out, impressive players. So, I hopefully from for their perspective, Payne does find this extra gear, whatever the reasoning is, whatever the motivation. I think that would go a long way towards, to at least addressing the concerns that we all, I think, still have about this defense and whether or not they really have enough pieces to, be more than just a passenger in this team's ride. Again, we think the offense should be pretty good. The defense has got to do more. Otherwise, it's going to be hard to repeat. And if Deron Payne plays like he did in 2022, then we may be talking about a different story.
What about the notion, I know you have heard this, I've heard this as well, that Deron's ready to thrive with John Allen gone? What do you make of that? Do you believe that?
if you tell me that's ultimately a reason why he has a good year, that won't be a stunner to me. I mean, like when you go back to when they had the 4 first-round picks on the line together, Duran was typically the one that was like the least discussed, right? I mean, Chase Young was the number 2 pick and had a lot of hype. I mean, John Allen was the first one. It was the first one to be a Pro Bowl player. Sweat had this sort of crazy athleticism off the edge, and Duran was, the workman-like guy, super strong, but sacks get a lot of attention, and he wasn't that guy. And now those 3 are gone. He's the last one left. He's Will Smith in the in the meme, standing in the living room with an empty living room. And this is his chance. I mean, it's his time. And last year obviously John Allen was hurt for most of the year, but this, from the start, it's that. And look, we all remember their little pushing contest on the sideline in that Dallas disaster game a couple of years ago. And, it was notable because these are 2 guys that have been teammates for a long time, going back to Alabama. And, I never kind of assumed that they were BFFs. They had Daron Payne's locker was across the locker room for where the other defensive linemen were. This isn't the other regime when they had everybody grouped by positions. The current situation, they're just all mixed up. All that to me suggested it's not necessarily the best of relationships. And there could be a little bit extra in his step these days, knowing, hey, it's my show, so to speak. I'm the guy. These other guys are all gone. Let me show what I can do without them around.
All right. Von Miller spoke after practice, his first opportunity with you guys, on the beat. What did he say? Impressed with him? Give us the gist of anything that came out of Von Miller's mouth today.
Well, Kevin, I know that occasionally you'll ask the team PR for a guest to come on, and it would be great to get Jaden, or if Terry McLaurin is around, it'd be great to get him, and then just kind of go from there. I would suggest to you that if you're going to skip the Jaden and Terry ask, go for Von Miller. We spoke for 20 minutes, and there's probably like 6 or 7 different quotes that he had that I could lead a story with, just in terms of the analogies he was using and the passionate way he was talking about things. He was asked, among the things I'm remembering here, he was asked, why did you pick Washington? And he said, look, obviously it's, there's a lot of improvement here, the year they just had. He's like, but look, you don't leave Josh Allen for just nothing. It's got to be something good to do that. And that was one. I asked him, if you look at the pass rush numbers last year, raw numbers, he's not one of the league leaders with 6 sacks. But in terms of like efficiency, play by play, in terms of reps and sacks. So I said, how have you learned to do that? He's like, well, look, I'd rather play all the time because I like to set up offensive linemen with certain moves. Now I don't have that opportunity. So he's like, now when I come off the bench, and he is a known basketball fan, Kobe Bryant fan, he said, now when I come off the bench, I'm just shooting threes. Nope, I'm dribbling, shooting threes. No passing, none of that. I'm just getting my shots up.
Right. The ball hits his hands. It's going up. Nobody else is touching it.
Right. And, he also talked, I asked him about Bobby Wagner. Obviously they've not played together, but they've, been, contemporaries throughout their career. Both look like they're going to the Hall of Fame. And, what's that like? He goes, yeah, Bobby's always like stealing my votes for all pro at linebacker and things like that. And, said a lot of complimentary things though about him. And yeah, there was just a lot. He is, you can tell he very much likes not just to talk, but I mean, he's willing to share what he's thinking about his career, how he's preparing for the season, whatever it may be. So yes, I would highly recommend, look, you can just skip your last hour of the show, go put it the last 20 minutes, go find the Von Miller audio and just play that. You'll be fine.
That's interesting advice. I'm certainly going to consider that. We are talking to Ben Standing. All right, last one, because I didn't ask you about him yesterday, but I think we talked about him a few weeks ago as, a guy that's got something to prove. We did that segment, Who's Got the Most to Prove? And you mentioned to me, let's not forget, Matt Gay has something to prove, and they need him to be good this year. They had, all those kickers last year. So how has he looked so far in camp? Do you think they got it right with Matt Gay? We don't know until regular season starts, but does he look like he can kick?
Yeah, I mean, it's been, not only is it only 2 days, the kicker, at least when we're out there, isn't always getting a ton of reps. They did like have him on the field today, and they were going through the play itself, but then like he actually wouldn't kick it. They would just block. Tressway would get the snap and hold, but he wouldn't actually kick. Yesterday, he did. As I recall, made a couple of decent kicks for sure. But look, this is a guy who just a couple of years ago was good enough that the Colts gave him as a free agent the highest free agent kicker contract ever. And he went to when he went to Indy, it just did not work. He was really unreliable from 50 plus, and his overall percentage went down. But we've seen him do this before and be successful. And look, there is no other kicker here in camp, so I think they're pretty confident that he's going to be the solution. And look, I mean, whether he is a top 5 kicker in the league, who can say? But they just need somebody not only be consistent, somebody who's got a leg. He has that. And, somebody you can feel confident with. The guys that they had last year, some of them did fine jobs, here and there. But, it always felt like, oh, boy, what's going to happen here with Seibert and Zane Gonzalez? Okay, he made that one good. With Zane Gonzalez, he hit the post in Tampa, right, to get that one. So I think they feel more generally confident, and then hopefully he can be more consistent than he was last year from distance. But at least I think they feel they have a guy that when they're at, a 55-yarder, it's not like, well, we better go for it. I think they feel they have a guy that they can confidently believe has a chance to make those.
At Ben Standig, everybody. His podcast is Last Man Standig, and his new Substack is lastmanstandig.substack.com. I'll talk to you later. Thanks.
Awesome. See ya.
Denton Day, my former producer on this show, is doing yeoman's work out at training camp. Yesterday, we got a couple of interviews from Denton. He has interviewed the Jacoris. There are 2 Jacoris on the roster, both new players on the roster. You'll hear those when we come back. Also, Dan Quinn talked a little bit today about the quarterback consistency and Cliff Kingsbury being back for a second season. Also, there's breaking news on a significant sports passing. We'll share that with you when we come back. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com. Sad news in the pop culture sporting world. Hulk Hogan passed away today at 71 years old. This is, I'm going to be perfectly honest with you, it's not a person that I can speak to in a way that I would with someone else passing. So Chris Russell is going to jump on with us at the end. Chris was a big WWE guy, Hulk Hogan guy. So he'll jump on with us at the end. But I know how significant Hulk Hogan was to a generation of wrestling fans and entertainment fans. Certainly one of the more significant entertainers of the last 40 or so years. 71 years old. They're calling it a sudden heart attack, cardiac arrest at his home in Clearwater, Florida. 71 years old. Hulk Hogan has passed away. So again, we'll talk more about that with Chris right before his show at about 12:45, 12:50. I did want to share with you what Mark Klaus, the team's new team president, said about the news today that Phil Mendelssohn broke, the city council chair, that they're going to vote on the RFK deal on August 1st, a week from tomorrow. So a week from tomorrow, it will become official that the RFK project will move forward and the team will be targeted for a return to D.C. and the RFK site in the year 2030. Mark Klaus, the team's president, and these are the kinds of subjects that you want to hear from the team president on. You don't want to hear the team president jump in the middle of a Carson Wentz media back and forth, as our team president did 3 years ago. Klaus wrote, quote, "We are thrilled that the council will vote to hopefully support this project on August 1. We appreciate their effort to keep us moving toward our goal of opening our new stadium for 2030. We are also grateful for the valuable feedback and support from our fans and community over the last several months. We believe in the transformative power of this project for DC and thank Mayor Bowser for her vision and leadership, as well as Chairman Mendelssohn and the council for their thoughtfulness and diligence in collaborating on our plan. Through this process, we've seen firsthand how committed our city's leaders are to building a strong future for the district. With the council's announcement today, the opportunity to bring the team back to its spiritual home and revitalize a critical part of the nation's capital is now a step closer," closed quote. Again, that from Mark Klaus, the team president. Yesterday, we put out a poll. Terry's holdout. Whose side are you on? Are you more Team Terry or more front office? I did not project what I thought the vote would be before, but I'll tell you now, I would have been dead wrong. I would have guessed that 70% plus would have been Team Terry, right around 30% team front office. 2,500 votes, basically. Team Terry, 50.2%. Team front office, 49.8%. Basically a dead heat of a rather large sample size of votes of the team's fans. Most of the votes, I am assuming, off of my Twitter account would be fans, past or present, of the team. Basically a dead heat. I didn't say this before we talked about it. I was team front office, but I could see both sides, and I certainly hope that they reach a long-term deal. But I would have guessed 70-30 Team Terry over team front office. That would have been my guess. I would have been dead wrong. Are you surprised, Chris, at the results?
A little. I honestly thought more people would be for Terry.
That's what I'm saying.
I thought it'd be kind of a landslide in his favor. So I am a little surprised.
Well, then you are surprised.
Yeah, I am. I
am too.
To see more even, I guess.
Yeah, pretty much a dead heat 50.2 to 49.8. I think I looked at this at one point very late last night, and team front office actually had a slight lead. They were at like 50.1, and Team Terry was at like 49.9. Yeah, it ends up being Team
That's slicing
Terry
the
by a
bologna pretty
smidge.
thin.
I'm sorry?
So that's slicing the bologna pretty thin. That's pretty much 50-50.
That is extra thin sliced on the deli meat, no doubt. That's the way I like it. I actually like it chipped, where it's kind of all chopped up. I like I like deli meat sliced that way too. I don't like thick cut deli meat. All right, our guy Denton was out at training camp today, and he had two conversations like he did yesterday, and we're going to play both of them back right now. The two Jacories. So the team has Ja'Cory Brooks, a wide receiver, undrafted free agent, remember, this year in 2025, a 6'2", 200-pound wide receiver from Louisville. And then, of course, 7th-round pick, Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt, who was at Arizona for a game, but really has had the production in college at New Mexico. There are a lot of high hopes for Krosky Merritt, I know, among our fans. Denton talked to both of them. Which one do you want to play first, Chris?
Let's do Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt.
Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt, running back, 7th rounder with Denton out at practice today afterwards.
All right, second day of practice out here at training camp at the NFL. How'd it feel out there, man?
Yeah, great. Just happy to be around the whole team. Great organization and great people. So, I'm excited to play for the people around me.
I saw you found the end zone a couple times there. Doing 11-on-11s. What are you seeing in the backfield and hitting the hole there?
Just being me, just trusting the reads, just knowing what read I have on this play, and just really just studying and having a feel for the game. That's where it pretty much comes from.
You got a lot of veterans in that running back room. What are you kind of learning from some of those guys in the early process here?
I'm just learning the small details. The small details it takes to be a great running back, and like those guys brought me in. And it's number of respect for those guys. They teach me day by day what I need to do to get better. We just feeding off each other, and that's great.
What's it like being out there in the backfield with Jaden Daniels?
It's good. He's a great quarterback, smart quarterback, and I'm just ready to work on side of him.
What's the process been like of learning an NFL playbook?
Just basically it just come on like how much time you want to put in it. And I've been putting the time in, and it's becoming easy.
So obviously the first couple of days are fun. You guys are in shells. Pat's coming on soon. How excited are you to get out there and get some content?
I'm definitely excited because I guess just what people want to see. I really don't think it'll be a difference, but I'm just ready to just taking it step by step. It's just part of the process. That's not being in pass, and when we get in pass, still just gonna try to do me.
Rookie running back Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt with Denton after practice today out in Ashburn. High hopes, because of the lack of running back productivity, especially towards the end of the year. I've mentioned this before, basically Isaiah Pacheco over the last 10 years is about the only running back drafted in the 7th round that has become a meaningful contributor. So the odds are stacked against him, but because he really didn't have a college season last year, played in the opener with Arizona and then was ruled ineligible based on, I guess, how it came about where he went from New Mexico to Arizona, he may have gotten lost in the shuffle because he had one hell of a season in 2023 at New Mexico, rushing that particular season for 1,190 yards, averaging 6.5 yards a carry, rushing for 17 touchdowns that year. So it's very possible had he played an entire season at Arizona, he would have gone earlier. There were a lot of running backs in this draft as well. So there's always a chance, and Washington certainly has the opportunity for a running back. Brian Robinson Jr. probably starts as the first round back, and you got to hope that Austin Eckler, coming off multiple concussions last year, is healthy, because when he was in the lineup last year, it was a better offensive team. And don't forget, Deebo Samuel will be a part of the backfield mix as well. All right. Ja'Cory Brooks is another rookie. I think he was one of those rookies, undrafted free agents that got, a nice sized signing bonus. They were excited to have him, 6'2", and a half, 200 pounds, out of Louisville, a guy that was very productive last year, over 1,000 yards, 9 touchdown catches. And he started his career at Alabama, and in 2022 actually had 8 touchdown catches for the Crimson Tide in 2022. This was Ja'Cory Brooks with Denton after practice today out in Ashburn.
All right, day number 2 out here at training camp. How'd it feel out there, man?
I feel amazing, man. Great job to come out here and compete with the guys and just have fun.
What's it like working with this wide receiver group and learn from guys like Deebo Samuel?
It's amazing. I'm watching every receiver. Deebo, he's a leader. He's a vet. So, just watching his route running and how he carries himself, just be a sponge and soak everything up.
Working with Jaden Daniels, obviously he was prolific in year number 1. What is it like catching passes from him and working with him on the sideline behind the scenes?
It's amazing. I'm still as a young player that I am, I just learn, critique mistakes, that if I do make mistakes, and just get better every day and learn from him.
So you mentioned, the making mistakes is training camp. Those are going to happen. What is that camaraderie like with the guys and helping each other when you do need some things fixed?
That's what a team do. As a receiver room, we pick on things that we seen and critique it the next day and try not to make the same mistakes. And that's how we just get better.
What's it like learning this NFL offense?
It's smooth. It's not too difficult. It's not too hard. Football is football. Just got to be in your playbook.
Great job by Denton. Denton's doing a great job, and I really appreciate that. Ja'Cory Brooks after Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt today out at training camp. Dan Quinn is holding a daily presser before every practice during training camp. And he was asked earlier today about Kingsbury coming back for year 2. Here's what he said.
The two of them and Tavita and David Blau, Brian Johnson, like this, ecosystem of quarterback play, it's really cool. But the person right in the front and center of it is Jayden, and it's the work ethic that he just doesn't back off, and that's one of the things that I really admire about him, that he is not changing the way he approaches things. I want to get in early to find my edges and find the spot. So it is one of the things that I really, really appreciate him. The unseen work that goes in with him, it's a lot. And the staff's a big part of that, because, when you're doing those things together, like, you're helping them get ready. And so we're very fortunate that way.
All right, that was a little bit different than I thought. More about the quarterback, but the staff as well. Look, they've got an outstanding coaching staff. A really good coaching staff, and there are a lot of talent on that staff offensively, led by, of course, Cliff Kingsbury. And I think, you have to consider the distinct possibility, if they're really good on offense again, that this will be it for Kingsbury, that he will end up getting a head coaching job. And what Washington has supporting him are coaches like David Blau and Tavita Pritchard, Brian Johnson, and even a guy that was a former head coach and heads up their running game, and Anthony Lynn. There's a lot of possibilities, within the coaching group right now, where you could replace Kingsbury if he ends up being a head coach in 2026 from your own staff. I'll also throw out this, and I think I talked about this like 2 or 3 weeks ago. Washington ended up oddly signing Josh Johnson to be a quarterback for training camp. You typically do have 4 in training camp, and they've got obviously Jayden and Marcus Mariota. They've got Sam Hartman still, but they went out and signed 39-year-old Josh Johnson, who was in San Francisco in 2022 when you also had in 2022 Adam Peters in San Francisco. Josh Johnson has been called by Jay Gruden one of the smartest players he has ever been around. Josh Johnson's had like an incredible career when you look at it, going all the way back to 2008 when he was drafted in the 5th round by Tampa Bay. I mean, he keeps getting signed over and over again. Why? Because people love having him in his locker room. Well, 39 years old to jump on Washington's roster says to me that this is probably going to be it. And then he's going to be a part of perhaps their coaching staff. You know, whether it's here or somewhere else, he'll probably be a coach. But the fact that he chose here with an Adam Peters that he's very familiar with, and a situation in which there's a lot of talent, there's a lot of people that believe David Blau, Tavita Pritchard got interviewed for OC jobs, but that they could have, 2 future OCs at least on this staff. And that they could be turning them over. Maybe getting ahead of our skis a little bit after one really good offensive season, because one injury and Kingsbury's the OC again in 2026. But Josh Johnson didn't come here to have an opportunity to play quarterback. He came here for some reason, and I would say it's because he's going to be great in the locker room, but he's looking at that next move where he wants to be involved in football, I'm guessing, and he viewed Washington and Adam Peters, who he's very familiar with, as this makes sense. So we'll see. All right, when we come back, Chris Russell will jump on with us, and we'll talk about the passing of Hulk Hogan. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the Team980.com. Hulk Hogan passed away today, at the age of 71. Chris Russell will jump on with us here momentarily. Chris, a big wrestling guy. I'm not. Never was. I mean, maybe back in the 80s, some Saturday morning for a little while, Hulk Hogan, a part of that, and I certainly remember Hulk Hogan, but I can't speak to anything other than understanding what a significant entertainer he was for a long period of time. He died of cardiac arrest at his home in Tampa, Florida. So when Chris is ready to jump on, he'll jump on with us.
Do you remember when he body slammed Andre the Giant in WrestleMania? That was like the big one for me when I was a kid. That was like one of the iconic moments of Hulk Hogan, was when he actually picked up Andre the Giant and body slammed him.
Yeah, like I said, I'm not a wrestling guy, so that's not a moment that I would remember. I do know, I believe that Andre the Giant at one point was, a guy that George Allen, the head coach of the Washington Redskins, was interested in signing sometime in the 1970s to play. But other than that, not familiar with the moment or any moments. Just not a wrestling guy. So. Yeah, we'll get Chris on to talk about it. By the way, there was an injury in the NFL early this morning that had a brief 15-minute moment of, oh my God, Justin Fields is out for the Jets. He was carted off the field at New York's training camp practice with an injured right toe. But new head coach Aaron Glenn said afterwards he did not think that the injury was serious. That would be so New York Jets if on the second day of camp, Justin Fields ended up being hurt. Will it work out for Justin Fields in New York? Who knows? It is interesting to look at their roster because offensively, they've got talent. Defensively, they were horrible last year after having some talent and being good in 2023. And then their kicker, Zerline, missed 3 game-winning kicks last year. But they've got, still Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson. And they added in the draft the LSU tight end, Jason Taylor's son, Mason Taylor, was added to that roster. But he's apparently okay. This is the time of year, you're going to have probably a massive injury or two during camp. Fingers crossed that none of them are here. There was one other. All right, Chris is sitting down right now, and we'll get him on. I did want to mention, there's one publicly traded NFL team, which means you get information about the economics of NFL teams via the Packers being required to disclose it as a publicly traded company. They disclosed their 2024 numbers, in which it was a blowaway number in terms of the amount. $432.6 million came from media, which means every team, because it's divided equally among 32 teams, pulled in $432.6 million in media money. To give you an idea, 15 years ago, that number was $138 million. The NFL prints money. Do we have Chris?
I am here, Kevin. How are you?
I am fine. I know you're a big wrestling guy. I'm not.
Yeah.
So tell everybody the significance. I know it's a massive story right now. Hulk Hogan passing away at the age of 71.
Yeah. So, Hulk was definitely and completely flawed, right? He was far, far, far from a perfect individual. Let's start that. And let's just acknowledge the obvious, okay? But Hulk Hogan, Kevin, is arguably, if there's even an argument, the most famous, the most influential, the biggest individual figure as to why WWF, which is the old name, WWE, which has been the long time name now, and why professional wrestling blew up beyond anybody's expectation, between anybody's thoughts, Why? Because of his unbelievable physique, charisma, personality, his appearance in Rocky III.
Yeah.
Rocky III, which put him big time on the map. He was already an emerging young wrestler at that point. His career and his personality and his lifestyle and everything blew up after that point in a day and age where wrestling was more geared towards kids and superheroes and not adults necessarily, Kevin, and not men and women and adults, which it clearly is now more than kids. Hulk Hogan, again, redefined everything there was about the sport of professional wrestling and what it meant to be more entertainment as opposed to the true grappler or the collegiate style of wrestling or the old school, old form of wrestling. That's what he did.
The time frame for the emergence of Hulk Hogan is the 80s, correct?
Yeah. Yep. He, I think Rocky III, I want to say came out, double check this, 82, 83, somewhere in that range.
Rocky III would have been, mid 80s.
And by
for sure.
1984, I believe it was, I got to double check the date, January 23rd, 1984, he beat the Iron Sheik at Madison Square Garden for the then WWF Heavyweight Championship. I believe it was like 1 month after the Iron Sheik had won the title from longtime champion Bob Backlund, who was, again, one of those old school kind of grapplers. And Hulk Hogan beat the Iron Sheik, and it was right during the USA-Iran war and what it meant. And that also is a part of this too, right? He billed himself in his intro song, I Am a Real American, after he initially started with Survivor and Eye of the Tiger. It became this thing about Hulk Hogan is Americana. Hulk Hogan is the real American, the ultimate American, during a time and day where things were certainly divided, war-wise and friction-wise like they sometimes are now, but it meant something different, quite honestly, back then.
Was he sick?
So there were all sorts of rumors. I don't think anything was officially, substantially admitted to. Like his wife, I guess, denied that he was supposedly on his deathbed a couple of weeks ago. I believe there was a report about that. I didn't hear a lot about this. I mean, I knew he wasn't doing great. I mean, I don't know how many people are at 71 who have been through the wars in his body. And quite honestly, some of that he contributed to, right? I mean, we all know steroids and, all that lifestyle was a big part of that. But, think about what his body went through. So none of that surprised me in terms of, okay, he wasn't doing good. What I didn't know, and maybe it's not directly connected, Kevin. You can obviously have cardiac arrest or a heart attack or whatever, just even if you're healthy as a horse. But I don't know if they were absolutely connected. But I mean, you put two and two together, and it probably one thing led into another. And then what happened this morning in his home in Clearwater, Florida, as it's being reported. What's interesting? I only met him briefly once, so I don't know him well. I was at his. He had a series of wrestling shops in Clearwater, in Orlando. He had some unbelievable memorabilia. Just so cool. Again, I want to be clear. He was not he was not the cleanest person on earth. Let's put it that way. So, this isn't somebody that's noble beyond belief. And I don't mean to be mean. I'm just being honest. But Hulk Hogan transcended not only the sport of professional wrestling, but I think he transcended a lot of America, honestly, from an entertainment and from a big picture sense, gave people a reason. I know it sounds stupid, to believe and to be optimistic and to train and say their prayers and eat their vitamins. That's what his thing was. And then you'd have 24-inch pythons, brother. And, Hulkamania lives forever. I mean, hell, I use WrestleMania as my Twitter. I mean, that's how WrestleMania, and that's how WrestleMania and my Twitter kind of derived off of that. That's Hulk Hogan, Hulkamania.
One of the things I've been reading over the last hour during commercial breaks is this, they refer to it with him as an all-time heel turn.
Yeah.
Explain that.
So
as it relates to
he
him.
was such a good guy for so long. All this iconic champion stuff, right? All the kids, the Say a Prayer.
Yeah.
And then what happened was a couple of his buddies went from WWE to then WCW, which was owned by Ted Turner and Turner Broadcasting and all that. And they created a faction called the NWO, called the New World Order. And so it was Scott Hall and Kevin Nash, who were, again, two pretty big stars in WWE and who went to WCW, and they were kind of like considered the outsiders and whatnot. And at Bash at the Beach in Daytona Beach, Florida, I think in 1996, I want to say, they promised a third partner, a secret partner. And everybody thought it would be Randy Macho Man Savage and this and that, whatever. And it turned out that it was Hulk Hogan. And he basically attacked Randy Macho Man Savage and turned bad and joined the NWO and started dressing in all black with the black beard and the black bandana and coming out to a different song than we had ever heard. And this was the first time, as still an icon, that Hulk Hogan turned his back on America and turned his back on the fans and turned his back on all that was good. And he played the part, Kevin, like a drum. I mean, he was just awesome. I mean, you want to talk about acting and actresses and all that, like professional wrestling. It's a lot of acting. It is a lot of show, as I think everybody knows, but you got to be good at it. You got to be able to sell it. Hulk Hogan sold it in every way. And people believed it, bought into it, and booed the ever-loving crap out of him and threw stuff at him. Not that I would encourage that, but he played that part hook, line, and sinker.
Wrestling historian and journalist Dave Meltzer once wrote, quote, "You can't possibly overrate his significance in the history of the business. He sold more tickets to wrestling shows than any man who ever lived. And his match with Andre the Giant in 1988 holds American television records for a wrestling audience with a 15.2 Nielsen rating and 33 million viewers. Hogan has often been cited as recently as 2022 as the number one general public who can name a professional wrestler answer. And that would have been my answer too. If somebody said the most famous wrestler of all time, I would say Hulk Hogan, and I'm not a wrestling guy. All right. I know you'll have more on this when your show begins, and plenty on training camp as well. Thanks for doing this.
Thanks for having me, Kevin. I appreciate you.
Chris Russell, everybody. Thanks to Ben, who joined us from training camp, Denton, who provided us with 2 interviews from training camp. Chris did a great job. Back tomorrow. Chris is next.